Hi. Now, was I stupid to start recording before I pulled up my script on my iPad? Yes, I was. Birthright is a Bernice Summerfield story based on a book by Nigel Robinson, adapted by Jacqueline Rayner, directed by Nicholas Briggs, with featured guest actor Colin Baker. This is continuing the Time Ring Trilogy from our last Bernice Summerfield audio. Here's a quick refresher on what happened in that's relevant here. There was more, obviously, but we're sticking with what's relevant here, which is that Bernice became close with someone named John Lafayette, who at the end, when he went back to his own time, accidentally took a piece of equipment Bernice needs for the sake of history. Can't leave advanced technology in the past. And this book takes place during his home time period. Thank goodness! As an explanation for the time rings, Bernice Summerfield and her ex-husband Jason Kane have time rings, which were a thing that existed in the books that these audios chose to use. They are a Time Lord time ring that was split into two wedding rings for Bernice and Jason. The time rings weren't actually used in the books that are being adapted here. They were used here mainly so that the audio range could have access to time travel, and so that they could do time travel stories. In fact, both this book adaptation and the next adaptation that we'll talk about next time came from when the book range had the rights to the Doctor, so as a result, adaptational changes were necessary for this. I do not own the original book for this one, so I can't check what specifically were the changes, but when I look at my resource book, it mentions that the Doctor spent most of his time in the next book in the range called Iceberg. I'm guessing, based on what we'll get into with the main review, that the Doctor was featured mainly at the end of the book, and Ace took Jason's place within the plot. That is 100% pure speculation on my part, based on what little information I have. What I did find when I was researching this adaptation was that this is the one that Jacqueline Rayner mentioned concerns about adapting. Or possibly this was just a comment about all of the adaptations that were done for Bernice Summerfield Season 1, but this is a quote that was featured in this section on this adaptation, so I'm talking about it now. She is quoted as saying, "I was quite worried about that people who knew the books really well would come to these and say I expected a straight adaptation of the book. I didn't want an original drama. And they'll dismiss it out of hand for that reason, and they'll not enjoy it because they keep comparing it to the books. But we're not doing straight adaptations. We're doing dramas based on books. And if people remember that, then hopefully they'll enjoy them in their own right." And I will say that's a fair sentiment, and an accurate reading of a certain element of fandom. But I will say this is a great way to go about doing these adaptations. And especially with the requirement that they had to remove the Doctor from the plot. Especially because they were doing this without the Doctor Who license, which this was recorded 4 months before the Sirens of Time was, and this was actually the last adaptation released before the Sirens of Time was. So there was a big gap before the next one, but we'll talk about that next time. Let's talk about the cover real quick. The cover's really good. I like the image of the featured alien of the story inside of the time ring matching with Walking to Babylon. It's a great continuous look for this trilogy to have, which brings it all together really well. The image inside of the ring is taken straight from the book's cover, and it works really well. Not much else to say, it's just a good cover. The story actually starts with Bernice, and flip-flops between a plot with her and a plot with Jason, and it's just going to be easier to talk about them separately. And Jason's story exists mainly to fill in details about Bernice's story, so it makes it easier for the audience to tell what's happening on Bernice's side of the story, since she only learns about some of the info that Jason does at the end. So I'm going to start with Jason's story just to make it a little easier. Jason spends most of his time with an alien race known as the Charl, an insectoid race who are facing extinction due to their planet Anticon being destroyed by solar flares, so they're hoping to go to Earth and live there. The Charl keep referring to Jason as Mammal, and we find out pretty quickly this insectoid race eat mammals, but they decide to keep Jason around because of how he arrived and the fact that the technology that got him there might help them escape to Earth. This technology, of course, being his time ring. Eventually, he has to tell them that Bernice has the other half of the time ring, but He doesn't know where she is. This isn't a problem for the Charl, who have already made contact with Earth and have a relationship with someone named Jared Khan, the leader of a cult called the New Dawn. The New Dawn are a group that believe that if they just get control of the world will be a better place. They also believe in insect superiority. From what I can tell, it's just taking the trope of cockroaches will survive anything and applying that to all insects, but the story doesn't even mention cockroaches, so their affiliation with insects is really just there to justify the connection with the Charl. While Jason is waiting around and talking with other members of the Charl, Jason looks out and sees outside of the base or ship, honestly I can't remember which it was, but the point is, he recognizes it and eventually he's able to realize he's on Earth in the future. More on that at the end. Jason is able to eventually convince the Charl to let him go to Earth using what they call the Great Divide.
The Great Divide!
The Great Divide is the space-time tunnel that connects Anticon, aka Earth in the future, to Earth in the past. It took a while to convince them to let him go through the path, because they have sent Charl through and they all died very quickly, so they don't want to lose the time ring and him. And we'll catch up with Jason after he has gone through the path and enters Bernice's side of the story. Bernice's story is a lot more disjointed than Jason's, and I feel like that's because of adaptational changes to the story, originally being a Doctor Who book that featured the 7th Doctor and Ace, as well as having to include elements to make the Time Ring Trilogy work. Bernice arrives on a random street and very quickly gets drunk at a bar. I only bring this up because it feels very disjointed from where she was at the end of the last audio. Yes, in other audios she does drink, but this does feel slightly unmotivated. And it's at this point in the bar that she learns about a murder that happened recently of a young woman. She's then kicked out of the bar and is almost attacked, but the person runs away. She is joined by someone who was also in the bar, named Mikhail Vladimir Popov, played by Colin Baker. And he is absolutely excellent in this part, and I wish he was in the story more. He basically only appears when Bernice needs help, because as we learn, he is a police detective from Russia, who is here because his daughter was one of the recent murder victims, and he is trying to help track down Spring-Heeled Jack, who the townsfolk believe is behind the killings. Based on the name Spring-Heeled Jack, I would have thought this is just a regular guy who jumps around a lot, but apparently is a Victorian-era supernatural being people claim to have seen, and is apparently now the inspiration for a very expensive brand of coffee that was the second suggestion when I searched for the character on Google. It's at this point that Bernice bounces around 3 very different plots. She investigates the murder, which leads to her finding a piece of Charl left behind after they died, and we are meant to conclude that the Charl are Spring-Heeled Jack. But there isn't really much of an explanation as to why. The closest we get is later when you find out they infect people with, Charl spores, and then the Charl can control those people. I'm still slightly unclear as to if this furthers the species, or if they just have mind control powers based on infection. Also, I guess we could conclude that the dead and dissected women were just investigations into anatomy, so that the Charl can learn how to infect people. There's apparently communication for them when they cross the Great Divide, but it's only women they attack, and why is unclear. I feel like this alien explanation for Spring-Heeled Jack just wasn't super well thought out. Another plot is Bernice following up on Lafayette, since he accidentally took a device of Bernice's when he left Babylon. And when researching for where he is now, she finds a librarian who, upon hearing her name, gives her a letter from Lafayette, where he says he left the device in a bank for her to get, password protected based on something only the two of them would know. She goes and leaves her time ring in the safety deposit box to protect it, and while upgrading the security for the box, Bernice says, "It's not that I don't trust 20th century locks, I just want to be extra safe, and I want to be very clear. She should not trust 20th century locks."
You are using a Master Lock Model 176. You can open it using a Master Lock Model 176.
But the reason why she is leaving it with extra security is because of the third plot, which is she is following the New Dawn, which despite a couple of listens to the story, I missed how she got onto them as a plot point. It might have been plot contrivance or just something I missed. But as I said earlier, they are a cult. And because of their communication with the Charl, they are working to get Bernice's time ring so that the Charl can survive and take over the world. This leads to them having a cop friend of theirs arrest her for murder, the one she helped investigate earlier that I told you about. They decide, yes, we'll arrest her. Commentary. And I really want to talk about this sequence because Bernice is a little crazy. As she's being processed, she takes her things out and is naming them aloud because it's audio and because I forgot to write it down. I'm just going to take the things I have here. She goes, ooh, I have a CD, I have a stand, I have the knife I used to murder her with. Just kidding. No, but really, she does get a reaction to that. And, wow, that I would not have made that joke to the police arresting me for murder. But, good on you, Bernice. Very quickly, Mikhail is able to get her out of prison, and the next thing I know, it's night, and all of a sudden Bernice is being woken by Jason. Jason gets the information out of a groggy Bernice where her time ring is, and he manages to get past her security, get the ring, and leaves and places both rings back where Bernice is staying because plot. Jason is trying to stop the Charl from destroying the world, but Bernice becomes infected with the Charl mind control stuff due to something I skipped earlier, and she uses the time rings to bring the Charl to Earth, and then almost immediately regains her senses. It's at this point that this being a Doctor Who book adaptation where you have removed the Doctor and made Bernice the protagonist becomes the most obvious, because Bernice starts to negotiate to let the Charl come here and not destroy humanity, which humanity would just go to war with them instead, which wouldn't be great. Bernice says there are parts of the Earth that are not being used and can't be used by humanity, so the Charl could just live there. Ignore the stock footage of the Silurians, it's referencing nothing. It's at this point that Mikhail returns and has gotten the cops to shoot at the Charl. Why is there more stock footage of the Silurians? Then, in the most this was supposed to be the Doctor scene that ever could have been, Bernice just happens to know a planet where the Charl could go, that she and Jason can use their time rings to send them there. I alluded to this earlier, but I find it strange that the Charl are presumably the advanced form of our insects from, the past at least, relative, could be the present, and they're going back in time to take over their own planet in their own past when the environment wasn't destroyed, and they don't really follow up on the paradox of it. Wait, why is the Fourth Doctor story Paradox Planet's cover on screen? Oh, come on! Why are you showing the Toclophane? In the end, everything mostly works out, and Bernice and Jason are able to send the Charl to their new planet when the leader of the New Dawn approaches, which disrupts the corridor, and sends Bernice and Jason off to part 3 of the Time Ring Trilogy. Overall, as a middle part of a trilogy, this story was always going to have a challenge. It exists to bridge between two better stories, and it needs to connect them while also being its own thing. It also struggles because it's an adaptation of a book where you legally have to remove certain characters, and it just makes the whole story overly crowded with way too much to do. Also, it shouldn't go unremarked that this story is about a group of aliens traveling to a new area, time in this instance, looking for a new home whose first plan is kill everyone and take over. This can very easily be looked at as an anti-immigrant story, which I do not think any of the creatives involved intended this, but it's also not the last instance of early Big Finish accidentally falling into this type of narrative. I'm looking at you, Flip-Flop. Your day is coming. At this pace, I'm sure it'll be in 10 years, but rest assured, the day is coming. I'm actually not even mad that the ending felt like a lot of Silurian stories, where they even try the exact same solution that has been proposed in lots of Silurian stories. I'm just upset that no one can come up with a better solution to the problem of let the aliens use the parts of Earth that we can't use, but we can't have them do that because it's actual Earth, so let's just have the humans shoot them. Overall, the story is just okay. It's got too much to handle and sadly just exists in a really tough spot inside of a trilogy. But this is not the last instance of early Big Finish accidentally following. God damn it. I made it so far. I did 2 whole paragraphs in one go, and I screwed it up there. She investigates the murder, which leads to her finding a piece of charl left behind after they died, and we are meant to conclude that the charl are spare... I'm distracted because I heard the mailman going down the street, and I've been waiting for a package today. I'm pretty sure it's the latest Bernice Summerfield audio, amazingly enough. Tell you what, I'll film it, and if it is, I'll put it here. Okay, yes, my package did come. And let's be very careful because I have not taped over my address. Yeah, there you go. Alright, and if we very carefully remove this... Ah, good, I'm clear now. So if we take a look in here, we will see... there it is. The Eternity Club Part 4. The final one I need. Alright, yeah, this one just came out, and I have not had a chance to listen to it yet, but I have been enjoying the Eternity Club and the Dalek Eternity Club. Yeah, I just said the name, and I've already said it wrong, but that's really what this is, the Dalek Eternity Club. So, yeah. Hopefully, this is a good one. So, I mean, the rest have been, but, yeah, I'm just kind of rambling now. Anyway, thanks for watching.